Today I'm going to be making my attempt at a $1 versus $10 ramen. You may be asking why $1 versus $10? Well, there's a very simple answer. If I were to try to do a $100 Naruto ramen, it would just involve Wagyu beef and maybe some gold leaf. And to me, that doesn't make sense because none of you will make that. So instead, we're gonna pare it down, something that all of us could possibly make. From the very cheap side of the $1 version to the slightly nicer side of the $10 version, but there are a few caveats that I'm going to talk to you along the way. Now, when you're making anything at home, it's very difficult to make something for a singular dollar. That's because, for the most part, you cannot buy ingredients in their individual form. I can't buy one slice of bacon. So in the case of the first ramen we're making for the dollar version, I had to buy a pack of bacon. This pack of bacon was about $5 and they're really nicely thick cut pieces that honestly will go really, really well in lieu of using something like chashu. So the real cost of this is about 25 to 30 cents, depending on how many slices of bacon are in there, sometimes more, sometimes less. I think this actually came out to about 50 cents per slice. The next thing I'm using is of course instant ramen that we're going to doctor up, and this is the cheapest I could find at my local Asian market. This is Mama's brand. It's very delicious and it's about 40 cents per pack. So we're still under the $1 mark. Then to really give it some life, Kewpie mayo. This is a really great hack if you have some cheaper ramen at home and you want to add kind of that unctuousness. It gives it a little more viscosity to the broth, gives it a ton of flavor, and the additional fat really does help the ramen. But you can also add in a raw egg and mix that together and you also get the similar effect but with an egg instead of mayo. But keep in mind, again, this is about $4 a bottle depending on where you live. So just to make a $1 ramen, we actually have to spend about $10 to $12 depending on what you're using. Luckily, this ramen will also get one ramen egg that we're also going to use for the $10 version because the eggs only cost around 20 cents each, which is fantastic. As a chef, I had to do a lot of this menu costing on my own. This is why when you develop a menu, you don't always just consider how much one dish will cost, because if you need to buy, let's say, chicken for buffalo wings, you have to buy them by the case. You can't just buy 12 chicken wings. And while this water is heating up, I want to tell you about my brand new Kickstarter for my new book, Quest for the Best Tokyo. You can get this right now. It's still available over on Kickstarter at the link down below, and it recounts my adventures throughout Japan. This is based on the entire Quest for the Best series that we filmed out there, including all of the foods that I had eaten while I was in Japan. What I love about this brand new book is that it tells you everything that I went through, but I include full recipes for things that I ate. This way you can follow along in the adventure and still be able to make the food at home. We've put a ton of work into this, from the maps that will be included, so this way if you go to Japan you can follow along on the same routes we did, to all of the recipes that I created just for this book. If you want to pick this up, go down to the Kickstarter right now and make sure you reserve yourself a book, because this Kickstarter is getting the limited edition creator's copy, which includes artwork for the creators who joined me on this journey. So if you want this limited edition cover, make sure you go to the Kickstarter right now and reserve your copy, and it's going to be signed for everyone on Kickstarter. Now let's make a $1 ramen. Why did this not turn on? Boil. How do you use technology? Now this $1 ramen is incredibly simple. We're just going to take our instant ramen, which was 40 cents, place this into our water. I know this is a professional chef just making instant ramen, but there's a point to all of this. Apparently for this version, we add the packet seasoning after the noodles are boiled. Bacon has to be cooked over here because this doesn't work on this. These noodles are going to cook relatively quickly, and once they're done, we can just set them on the stove while we make the second batch of noodles, which will be the $10 version. We did some special things for that one because we had a much bigger budget, but I had my prep cook, former me, make that. Once the noodles are soft, we're adding in our good stuff. Each of these ramens, I should say, is a pork broth. Now with this done, we're just gonna place this on the stove while we finish that bacon. Now the $10 version, we were able to buy a few things that we weren't able to buy for the $1 version, primarily some pork to emulate the chashu. Now, unfortunately, pork belly was very expensive. It was about $10 for the only pack that was left in the store. But I was able to find pork shoulder That was $4 for this entire piece of pork shoulder, and this will go a long way. Now, former me was able to prep this out the day before because chashu should be cooked the day before, so this way you can actually slice it and it doesn't fall apart. There's so much steam right now. So while I'm boiling this ramen, which is which one was this one? Ah, yes, Sapporo Ichiban, which was 90 cents, I'm going to explain to you exactly how I made a very cheap chashu using pork shoulder. Now, you do have to make the chashu the day before, so I picked up this really cheap pork shoulder, which is only about $5. I trimmed off just a little bit so it would fit into my pot and kept that piece for later. After simmering the pork for around 20 minutes, I'm adding in 1 cup of soy sauce, 3 ounces of dark soy sauce, 1 cup of cooking wine, and a handful of green onions. I'm placing a drop lid on top of this to hold the pork down while it simmers. Oh god, oh god, oh god. Just don't let it overboil because this can be a pain to clean up. Now, the pork does need to simmer for around 2 to 3 hours until it's nice and tender, so while that's going, I'm going to hard boil some eggs to make our ramen eggs. I'm dropping these into boiling water for around 8 minutes while I do a little dance, and then remove those from the boiling water and immediately place them into an ice bath to cool down. While those are cooling down, I decided to play around with some devil fruits that just didn't pan out this time. By now, the pork should be nice and tender and ready to pull out of its liquid, but remember, we need to save this liquid because this liquid is super important. We're going to use this liquid for these eggs. I've cooled down the liquid inside of an ice bath to make sure it was nice and cold before pouring them on top of the eggs. This way, we're not wasting any time or money to make our beautiful eggs. But now, my friends, it's time to try this tender, delicious pork. And let me just say, you are not ready for this. It's always nice having a little bit of help in the kitchen, even if that help is just yourself from the night before, because having these things ready to go and ready to eat whenever you want them is really helpful, especially for meal prep. What's great is that this ramen that we had made, including the eggs, the pork itself, and the noodles, was still under $10, and since we had to purchase everything, we're still able to make quite a few portions of the $10 ramen, but we still have to spend the money up front to make $10 ramen. Once these noodles are broken up, we're gonna add our soup base to this. This is our $10 ramen, and our extra little packet of seasoning that these newer, haven't had instant ramen in a long time, but come with packets of seasoning and the soup base. It smells admittedly very good. Now, these noodles are almost done, but what we're going to do is use a secret weapon since we already prepped this, and that is some of the braising liquid from the pork. This stuff is so flavorful because it includes the pork, the tare that we had used, which was the soy sauce, the sake, the dark soy sauce, and I think that was it. And we're going to add a touch of this to our soup. This is going to really amp it up. Gonna give this a quick mix, and this $10 ramen is almost ready to go. Now we're gonna heat up some of this pork. Now, we don't have to eat this entire block of pork, but we could if we wanted to because it would still be under budget. So instead, we're gonna do some really nice thick slices of pork. So we're gonna do 4 slices, which comes out to about $2 for about half of it. Grab a sheet tray, line it with some aluminum foil, and you can also just do this in a saute pan, but I'm just gonna hit it with a torch. Give this thing a nice torching. A lot of the time when you're in Japan, they are going to just use a torch to heat up the pork. Sometimes it's just kind of served on the ramen and the ramen itself will heat it up, but I do like hitting it with a torch. I do like to torch both sides. Some places don't. Some people only do the top side, but I just like to do both sides just to make sure you breathe a little bit of life into both sides. Now, with the pork done, we can plate up both of our ramen. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the $1 ramen will get a squirt of mayo at the bottom just to help give it a little bit more body. We're doing like maybe 1 to 1.5 tablespoons. You don't really need too much. This is our $1 ramen. I'm gonna try to put in some of the broth first and mix it around with that mayonnaise just so it's not too clumpy. It immediately gives it like this creamy looking color that reminds me of a traditional tonkotsu. Look at that. Look how beautiful that looks. Glistening, shiny, fatty. Now let's add in the rest of our broth and then try to get our noodles in there as nicely as we can. Give these a little stir, fold them over a bit. There we go. Now there's a big reason why I used instant ramen. And that reason is because the most expensive part of ramen, honestly, is the broth. You really can't make ramen broth for very cheap out of pocket initially. It does make a lot. You're basically making stock. But the problem is, to make that stock, you need tens of dollars worth of bones. The last time I made ramen broth for the Naruto video where I trained like Naruto for a day, just that broth alone cost me about $50 or $60 just to make the broth. Granted, it makes me a lot of broth, but again, the problem is that you have to spend $50 or $60 up front. So to circumvent circumvent that, I'm using the instant stuff which comes with base, and I actually lost quite a bit of broth in there. This might be too strong. I'm gonna add in a touch of water. I just have some boiled water here so it's not super concentrated. So if you are making ramen at home, just understand that there is a pretty big investment, not only in time, but in the dollar amount if you're making everything from scratch. This is why if you're really trying to make a $10 ramen, use a nice instant ramen that has a good base, or just go buy ramen. You can get a lot of great ramens, hopefully in your area, that are $10 to $12 for a great bowl of it. But look at how delicious this is. Oh my God, this looks so good. Oh, yeah. Our $10 ramen also gets some green onion because these were only like $1.50 for 3 bundles of it. You know, we're gonna help it out. We're gonna put a little bit here too. You can have 6 cents worth of onion. Take out one of these beautifully marinated eggs. Remember, these eggs were marinated using the same broth that I used for the pork. So you're kind of just upcycling the pork broth. Oh my God, it's still so jammy. Look at that. Come on. That just instantly made this like a $10 ramen. That's so pretty. And because we do have these prepped and we're gonna give it its best shot, the $1 ramen will get 1/2 an egg, which I believe comes out to like 15 cents or something like that. Freaking beautiful. This one, oh. And there, my friends, are 2 different ramens. Our $1 ramen that admittedly looks absolutely delicious for what it is. Less than $1 went into this, worth of ingredients with the caveats we mentioned earlier. But then look at our $10 version with that beautiful helping of pork, the full egg, the green onion, and the noodles underneath with all of the tare. That looks fantastic. But now the real question, which one is better, and is it worth it to spend the extra $9 or more to make this version? Now, unfortunately, no one is home except for me, Gandalf, and Lucian, so I can't really do a blind taste test, but I think it's important sometimes to not do a blind taste test because you are going to know how much money you're spending on something, so that actually does impact it, but I feel like when it's 2 cheaper products, it's not as impactful as like, I spent $100 on this, so I'm going to think it's delicious, or I spent $100 on this and I'm disappointed. Instead, it's like, okay, I spent 10 bucks, it was fine. We're gonna go into the noodles on this one first, just to see if there's any big differences in flavor. Itadakimasu. Tastes like instant noodles. That's 100%. Let's see if the broth has any distinct flavor. The broth is actually really good. It has a really good mouthfeel from the mayonnaise that we put. Really creamy, really milky. Honestly, I think this is a wonderful touch if you're having instant ramen at home and you want something a little better. And not gonna lie, oh, it's a little spicy, which is nice. Look at this pork. Look at this bacon. Look at that. This thing is thick. Unfortunately, it still just tastes like bacon. All in all though, for what it is, for being under $1, I give this a solid 7. Solid 7. It's really good. It's really good for $1. Now we tackle the $10 ramen. My first instinct is to go for one of these pieces of pork. Remember, this is not traditional chashu because we use pork shoulder versus pork belly, but it still looks pretty dang tasty. Itadakimasu. It's so tender and so much flavor from the broth that we had made, but it's not overly salty. It's so beautiful, especially for being pork shoulder. It was only cooked for 2 hours. That pork instantly makes me want this more. But now let's get into these noodles. Remember, these noodles are twice the price. So it's 90 cents instead of 45 cents, but it's twice as expensive. Let's go, let's dig in. The tare has absorbed a little bit into the noodles, the broth itself, I mean. Probably from having to take pictures and stuff, but the noodles are better. They're a thicker noodle than the $1 ramen. These are a little thinner, which, you know, makes it a little cheaper, I think. You can kind of see they're a much skinnier noodle than the Sapporo Ichiban. These ones have a nice bounce to them. They kind of have that really beautiful traditional curl, and they just, overall, they just taste better. So yes, for 45 cents versus 90 cents, the noodles are worth it. But now let's try our doctored up broth. This doesn't look like a traditional tonkotsu ramen because it's a lot darker than it should be, but it's probably gonna be really good. Oh, it almost tastes like a shio, which is a salt ramen. I do like the flavors here more. I feel like I could eat this whole bowl and kind of want more, but this egg too, we get to have the egg with it, which I had on the other one, but I'm just gonna have this one too. For $9 more, and being able to make a few portions, this one is worth it. But the little hack of the mayo in this is great if you're in a pinch and you don't want to spend this one. Remember, also took me a full day ahead because I had to make the pork. So I would say this took about 3.5 hours or so to make a $10 ramen. This one, if you don't count the egg, took all of 15 minutes. So there's something to be said about how much time you spend for each one, but I cannot be the judge of these. There's only one entity on the planet that can be the judge for this. Gandalf, come here. Come here. All right. Which ramen do you want? Is it going to be the $1 ramen or the $10 ramen? You going for that? Do you smell the bacon? Please don't eat it though. I'll give you a treat after. You're not allowed to have some of this stuff. Do you want this one? Or do you want this? I'm trying to push you towards the expensive one, but you clearly want the $1 one. I think it's the $1 ramen. The $1 ramen is Gandalf's clear winner. I prefer the $10 version because I love the pork, but I'm gonna leave whatever you need to make these down below so you guys can make them yourselves because they're not very expensive, and that's really what I want from this series. What I want from you is to go to Kickstarter right now and order the brand new book, Quest for the Best Tokyo. We can't make this happen without you guys, and there's a whole bunch of extra goodies there like a Gacha D20 that you can get, custom artwork, plus we have a very special bundle that includes this awesome headband that you can pick up for yourself. I really appreciate all of your guys' support here on the channel, and I just want to say thank you to all of my patrons who've been here as well. Gandalf, you get a treat now because I can't give you this ramen. This is not good for cats, so you get a treat. Here you go. There you go. My name is Chef PK, and remember, keep playing with your food. I don't have any more. Ow, ow!